If you study human behavior long enough, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. People rarely respect those who desperately seek respect. It sounds unfair, but psychology has never promised fairness, it only reveals patterns. The harder someone tries to convince the world of their value, the more the world begins to question it. On the other hand, the people who quietly carry themselves with certainty often receive admiration without ever asking for it. This isn't luck, it is perception, and perception is one of the strongest forces governing human relationships. Most people spend their lives chasing approval. They monitor every reaction, every facial expression, every comment, hoping to discover whether they are liked, accepted, or respected. They adjust their opinions to fit the room. They apologize when they have done nothing wrong. They explain every decision as though standing before an invisible judge. They become prisoners of other people's opinions without even realizing it. The tragedy is that this strategy almost never works. The human mind is wired to value confidence over persuasion. When someone constantly seeks reassurance, it unconsciously signals uncertainty. If you need everyone else's approval before believing in yourself, people begin wondering why you don't trust your own judgment. Respect starts fading long before anyone consciously notices it. This is one of the oldest principles of power. People instinctively follow emotional certainty. They are drawn toward individuals who appear comfortable standing alone, not because those individuals are perfect, but because independence suggests strength. And strength, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, has always commanded attention. Notice how truly confident people rarely rush to defend themselves against every criticism. They understand something most people never learn. Every explanation invites another judgment. Every attempt to justify yourself places your worth in someone else's hands. The more energy you spend proving your value, the more power you hand over to others. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. Arrogance is simply insecurity wearing expensive clothes. The truly valuable individual has no need to announce their importance. Their consistency speaks louder than their words. Their actions eliminate the need for endless explanations. Imagine two people entering the same room. One immediately begins telling everyone about their achievements, their sacrifices, and why they deserve respect. The other listens more than they speak. They remain calm. They never compete for attention. They answer questions directly and never exaggerate. Hours later, people often remember the second person more vividly. Why? Because confidence creates curiosity. Desperation creates exhaustion. Human beings naturally chase what appears difficult to obtain. This principle governs economics, relationships, leadership, and social status alike. Scarcity increases value, availability decreases it. The same psychological law applies to your attention, your approval, and your emotional energy. When your attention becomes available to everyone, it slowly loses significance. When your approval is handed out freely, it becomes ordinary. But when your attention is earned rather than given automatically, people begin treating it differently. They become more careful around you. They begin noticing your presence instead of expecting it. Many people misunderstand boundaries. They believe boundaries push people away. In reality, healthy boundaries reveal your value. Every boundary quietly communicates one message: my time, my peace, and my dignity have worth. Without boundaries, people often test how much they can take from you. They interrupt your priorities. They expect endless favors. They demand emotional labor while offering very little in return. If you always say yes because you're afraid of disappointing others, you don't become respected. You become predictable. Predictability is comfortable, but it rarely inspires admiration. Psychologically, people often appreciate what requires effort. Relationships, opportunities, and even friendships gain meaning when there is mutual investment. If you constantly overextend yourself while expecting nothing in return, you unintentionally teach others that your value comes cheaply. This is why emotionally independent people often appear magnetic. Their happiness does not depend on external validation. Their mood is not controlled by compliments or criticism. They are grateful for appreciation, but they do not require it to function. That quiet independence creates emotional stability, and emotional stability is deeply attractive because it is increasingly rare. Consider how often people lose themselves trying to be liked. They hide their opinions to avoid conflict. They tolerate disrespect to preserve relationships. They remain silent when their values are compromised because rejection feels unbearable. Yet every compromise chips away at their self-respect. Ironically, the more they sacrifice themselves for acceptance, the less respected they become. There is a profound philosophical truth hidden beneath this pattern. Before the world measures your value, you measure it first. Your behavior becomes your own public declaration of worth. Every unnecessary apology, every desperate pursuit, every fear-driven decision silently tells others how they should treat you. This is why self-respect always precedes external respect. People are constantly observing what you tolerate. They notice whether you abandon your principles under pressure. They notice whether criticism immediately changes your direction. They notice whether loneliness makes you accept poor treatment. They may never admit it, but these observations shape how they perceive your strength. Learning to walk away is one of the greatest demonstrations of value, walking away from disrespect, walking away from manipulation, walking away from situations that demand you betray your principles just to remain accepted. Walking away is not an act of hostility, it is an act of clarity. When you stop chasing people, something remarkable happens. The energy once spent seeking approval becomes available for growth. You sharpen your skills, you deepen your knowledge, you improve your discipline. Instead of asking, "How can I make people respect me?" you begin asking, "How can I become someone worthy of respecting?" That single shift changes everything. Because genuine value cannot be manufactured through image alone. It is built through quiet discipline, emotional control, unwavering standards, and a refusal to negotiate your identity for temporary acceptance. Once those qualities become part of your character, respect stops being something you pursue. It becomes something that naturally follows you. And remember this, the moment you stop begging the world to recognize your worth is often the exact moment the world begins to notice it, as you begin to stop chasing approval and learn to protect your self-respect. Another transformation becomes necessary. It is not enough to believe you have value. You must become someone whose value is unmistakable. This is where the psychology of rarity enters the conversation. Human beings have always assigned greater worth to what is difficult to find, difficult to earn, and impossible to replace. Whether we are talking about relationships, leadership, business, or influence, the principle remains the same. What is common is consumed, but what is rare is respected. Look closely at history. The most influential individuals were rarely those who demanded constant attention. They didn't spend their lives convincing others of their importance. Instead, they became so skilled, so disciplined, and so purposeful that people naturally gravitated toward them. Their reputation was built on substance, not noise. They understood that true value does not shout. It quietly changes the atmosphere of every room it enters. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing visibility with value. In today's world, everyone wants to be seen. They post every achievement, explain every decision, and constantly seek acknowledgement from strangers. While there is nothing inherently wrong with sharing your life, there is a hidden psychological cost when your identity becomes dependent on being noticed. When you constantly ask for attention, people unconsciously begin to assume you need it, and whatever someone desperately needs immediately loses part of its perceived value. Think about the people who leave the strongest impression on you. Often, they are not the loudest or the most expressive. They are the ones who speak with intention. They don't interrupt to dominate every conversation. They don't reveal every thought that enters their mind. Their restraint creates curiosity. Their confidence creates gravity. Their silence allows others to wonder what they are thinking instead of dismissing them as predictable. This is one of the overlooked powers of selective availability. Your time is your life measured in minutes. Every hour you give away can never be recovered, yet many people treat their time as though it has no value at all. They answer every message immediately, accept every invitation out of guilt, tolerate endless interruptions, and place everyone else's priorities ahead of their own. Eventually, people stop appreciating their generosity because what is always available soon becomes expected. Respect changes the moment your availability becomes intentional. This does not mean ignoring people or pretending to be busy to create artificial importance. That is manipulation, and manipulation has a short lifespan. Genuine selectiveness comes from building a life that has meaningful priorities. When you are deeply committed to your mission, your work, your growth, and your peace of mind, you naturally become less available for unnecessary drama and distractions. People notice this change. They begin scheduling around your time instead of assuming they own it. They begin respecting your boundaries because your actions consistently communicate that your attention must be earned, not demanded. Another quality that makes someone unforgettable is emotional consistency. Most individuals are controlled by circumstances. A compliment makes them overconfident. A criticism ruins their week. A minor setback destroys their motivation. Their emotions rise and fall with every external event, making them easy to predict and even easier to manipulate. Emotionally disciplined people operate differently. They experience emotions just like everyone else, but they refuse to become servants of them. They pause before reacting. They observe before judging. They understand that every emotional impulse does not deserve immediate action. This calmness often unsettles people. Why? Because emotional control cannot be manipulated as easily as emotional impulsiveness. Someone who remains composed during conflict possesses a quiet authority that words alone cannot create. They communicate strength without raising their voice. They demonstrate confidence without needing to prove it. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over emotion. Now consider another aspect of becoming difficult to replace: developing uncommon competence. Many people spend years improving their appearance while neglecting their abilities. They hope charisma alone will earn respect. But charisma fades when challenges appear. Competence becomes more valuable with every difficult situation. The individual who consistently solves problems, delivers results, keeps promises, and continues learning becomes indispensable. Their confidence is no longer based on opinion. It is supported by evidence. Every skill they master increases their independence. Every challenge they overcome expands their influence. This is why the highest form of confidence is earned confidence. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It is built one disciplined day at a time. There is another psychological truth that few people recognize. People rarely fear losing someone who can easily be replaced. They fear losing the person who brings something unique into their lives. That uniqueness does not come from pretending to be different. It comes from relentlessly developing your own character, your own thinking, and your own abilities. Stop trying to become more interesting, become more interested, read deeply, learn constantly, ask better questions. Travel when possible, study people, master difficult skills, spend time in solitude thinking instead of constantly consuming noise. Over time, your conversations become richer because your mind becomes richer. Your perspective becomes valuable because it has been earned through experience rather than imitation. This naturally creates mystery, not because you are hiding yourself, but because there is genuine depth beneath the surface. Remember that mystery is never about deception. It is about refusing to reveal everything immediately. There is wisdom in allowing people to discover you gradually. Every detail of your life does not need to be announced. Every success does not require applause. Some of the most powerful achievements happen in complete silence. Silence often accomplishes what endless explanation never can. People who constantly advertise their ambitions often receive temporary admiration. People who quietly pursue excellence eventually receive lasting respect. As your life becomes more purposeful, something subtle begins to happen. You stop measuring your worth by attention. You stop chasing invitations that do not align with your values. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you invest your energy where it produces growth. Ironically, this is when opportunities begin seeking you. The world notices people who are deeply committed to becoming exceptional, not because they demanded recognition, but because excellence naturally attracts attention over time. Never underestimate the power of becoming uncommon in an ordinary world. Ordinary people seek comfort. Extraordinary people seek mastery. Ordinary people compete for attention. Extraordinary people compete with the person they were yesterday. Ordinary people want quick admiration. Extraordinary people build lasting value. And that is the difference between being noticed and being respected. So, as you continue your journey, remember this simple but profound truth. Never make your goal to become popular. Make your goal to become irreplaceable. Popularity fades with trends, but true value survives every season of life. As we bring these ideas together, a deeper truth begins to emerge. Throughout this conversation, we've explored how chasing approval weakens your perceived value, and how becoming rare through discipline, emotional control, and purposeful living naturally attract respect. But none of those lessons can survive without one final principle: the courage to protect your value through unwavering standards. This is where respect stops being a hope and becomes a reality. Most people spend their lives trying to change how others see them. They learn communication techniques, practice confidence, and search for ways to appear more influential. Yet they overlook the one thing that truly shapes every relationship: what they are willing to tolerate. People may not consciously analyze your standards, but they constantly respond to them. Every interaction becomes a silent negotiation. Every conversation asks an invisible question: how far can I go with this person? Sometimes the test is obvious. Sometimes it is so subtle you barely notice it: a disrespectful joke, a broken promise, a request that ignores your priorities. A manipulation disguised as affection. These moments seem insignificant, but together they define the emotional structure of every relationship. The greatest mistake is believing that respect disappears overnight. It doesn't. Respect fades one compromise at a time. Every time you remain silent when your principles are violated out of fear of rejection, you teach people that your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you accept treatment that conflicts with your dignity because you don't want conflict, You quietly lower the price of your own self-worth. Human beings naturally repeat behaviors that carry no meaningful consequences. This isn't always malicious. It is simply part of how people learn. That is why your standards must remain stronger than your desire to be accepted. Acceptance feels comforting, but respect requires courage. There will always be moments when standing by your values costs you something. You may lose opportunities. Some friendships may disappear. Certain people may become uncomfortable when they realize they can no longer manipulate you as easily as before. At first, this loss can feel painful, but over time, you begin to understand that losing relationships built on weak foundations is not a tragedy. It is a necessary correction. Think about the strongest structures in the world. They are not admired because they look impressive from a distance. They are admired because they can withstand pressure without collapsing. Human character works the same way. Your principles mean very little until they are tested. Anyone can speak about integrity when life is easy. True integrity reveals itself when compromise promises comfort. This is where emotional discipline becomes essential. Many people confuse boundaries with emotional reactions. They believe protecting themselves means becoming angry, confrontational, or defensive. In reality, the strongest boundary is often delivered without emotion. It is calm, it is respectful, it is firm. It requires no dramatic speeches and no desperate attempts to prove a point. Imagine someone repeatedly crossing a line you have clearly communicated. Most people respond by arguing, complaining, or hoping the other person will eventually change, but psychologically, repeated explanations often weaken your position. Words lose power when they are unsupported by action. Action is what establishes credibility. If you say your time matters, protect it. If you say honesty matters, refuse to reward dishonesty. If you say respect matters, never continue rewarding repeated disrespect. People believe your actions long before they believe your words. Another powerful lesson is learning the difference between defending your ego and defending your principles. The ego wants to win every argument. It wants the final word. It wants everyone to admit they were wrong. Principles, however, seek something very different. They seek consistency. They are not interested in defeating another person. They are interested in preserving your character. This distinction changes everything. You no longer feel compelled to respond to every insult because your identity is no longer dependent on public opinion. You no longer waste hours trying to convince people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Instead, you quietly continue building a life that reflects your values. There is extraordinary strength in refusing to participate in unnecessary battles. Silence, when chosen wisely, is not surrender. It is selectivity. The strongest individuals understand that attention is one of their most valuable resources. Every argument consumes emotional energy. Every unnecessary conflict steals focus from meaningful goals. Instead of reacting to every provocation, they ask themselves a simple question: will this matter a year from now? If the answer is no, they move forward. That ability to move forward without carrying resentment is one of the rarest forms of power. Resentment traps people in the past. Standards keep people focused on the future. This is also why forgiveness and boundaries can exist together. Forgiveness does not require continued access. You can wish someone well while recognizing they no longer deserve a place in your life. You can release bitterness without reopening the door to repeated harm. Too many people believe kindness requires endless tolerance. It does not. Kindness without wisdom becomes self-sacrifice. Respect without boundaries becomes impossible. As your standards become clearer, something remarkable begins to happen. your circle naturally changes. Those who respected you only when you had weak boundaries begin to disappear. Those who genuinely value your character remain. At first, your world may seem smaller, but eventually you realize it has become stronger. Quality has replaced quantity. Trust has replaced performance. Peace has replaced constant approval seeking. This is the hidden reward of high standards. They do not simply change how others treat you, they transform how you see yourself. Every time you honor your principles instead of your fears, your confidence grows. Every difficult decision strengthens your identity. Every healthy boundary becomes proof that your self-respect is no longer negotiable. Over time, people begin to notice something different about you. You no longer seek validation because your actions validate you. You no longer fear rejection because your purpose is greater than popularity. You no longer measure success by how many people approve of you, but by how faithfully you live according to your own values. That is authentic authority. It cannot be manufactured through appearance. It cannot be borrowed through status. It cannot be taken away by criticism. It is earned through daily discipline. So remember this as you leave today. The world will always test the value you place on yourself. Some tests will come through temptation. Others will come through criticism, manipulation, or rejection. But every test gives you the same opportunity to reinforce your standards or to abandon them. Choose your standards every single time, because in the end, people do not truly respect the person who demands admiration. They respect the individual whose actions consistently declare, without arrogance and without apology, that their dignity is never for sale.